I jumped up off my couch and I was screaming and I was like getting closer to the TV with every stab and my hands were just like all over pulling my hair. And so I was like, am I a freak? Am I weird? Like does nobody else like feel this way about this show? And then somehow I found Nikki and Steven's channel. Watching Nikki totally lose her Burlington bar reactions. Like Game of Thrones really was, I think, the big thing that started a lot of people's interest in reactions. And it was like kind of this thing where it's like it gives you like a nice little dopamine hit, but you're re-experiencing the emotions that you had when you watched it before. And like the other people who don't get it or don't feel it that deeply, like you feel like a freak.
Yeah.
And it gives you like a sense of community in your people. And that was my introduction into realizing that other people were like me.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the Reactorverse podcast, brought to you by Passionfruit, where we interview all your favorite YouTubers in the reaction space. I am joined today by a guest I'm very excited for. You may remember her from our Avatar discussion of Crossing the Streams. It is Angela from her channel, FunnyLilGal Reacts. Angela, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah, I had a great time with you on our Avatar discussion, so I wanted to have you on since then. It's been a long time coming. Really, though, I've been waiting for you to finish Battlestar Galactica because I wanted you to come on here and be able to talk about that with me a little bit because that's my favorite show of all time. So I was waiting for you to get through that at least.
After finishing it, I feel like I need to talk about it too.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a little spoiler discussion there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in that time, though, you've also passed 100K. So congrats on that. Big milestone. Yes, congrats. It's up there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's been a very productive and impactful few years for you, just starting the channel and getting to 100K. So there's a lot to go over. Just a few short years. Start sort of in the beginning of things, as we always do. You started in 2021 during the pandemic boom of a lot of channels coming in. I've talked to some channels already that said that was a big part of why they started, how they started. Was that the case for you? Did you start in the pandemic sort of lockdown era because of like the time and place to just sort of click together for you?
Well, for me, the pandemic was a little different because I worked in, and I still do, in a dental office, and we were considered medical. So we could be open while other businesses couldn't be. So we were only closed for about 7 weeks. It was a very depressive 7 weeks of like not working and being at home. And I can't even imagine everybody else and what they went through, but it was a different experience for me. But I know during that period, I met a lot of new reactors. But then I think after the wave of the pandemic, I went through a very big breakup and bought my first house by myself, was living by myself. And I was like, I need to build something for myself. And I was always told that I should review movies and television shows. And like, I grew up in the Siskel and Ebert era to where people, were on TV, reviewing stuff. And I was like, well, I can't do that. That's not a thing. And like, it didn't seem like it was possible for me to talk about things that I had a passion about until I discovered reaction channels. And I was like, oh, wow. Like there's other people like me. They're reacting the same way as me. That really validated a lot of my feelings and emotions about how I responded to media. Right. So starting the channel was mostly a thing where it's a product of pandemic shenanigans and like rebuilding after the fact. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of people started like in the middle of everything. There was nothing else going on. Like they were stuck in their house, and like they were a comfort for me when, I couldn't get out of the house or even after the fact, so mine's a little different, but it's still residual from pandemic stuff, I think.
Yeah, makes sense.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. The pandemic stuff, also life developments. That's usually how things go. People, you know, trying to find something for themselves. It happens, and you know that's a big part of why people get into the space for that community, that sort of shared interest that you mentioned. Were you familiar with the reaction space, very well before that, prior to get starting the channel?
Yes. I would watch them as kind of a comfort to myself, because I've always been very outwardly expressive and emotional for things that I'm very passionate about. And I remember when I felt really alone watching something with somebody and I always say spoiler alert because I don't ever want to ruin anything for anyone. If you haven't watched Game of Thrones, maybe jump off. But watching like get stabbed and killed, I jumped up off my couch and I was screaming and I was like getting close to the TV with every stab and my hands were just like all over pulling my hair, and the pan out that they had of him and the blood spreading, I remember hitting my knees and I just started crying uncontrollably. And and my significant other was like, "What the hell's wrong with you? Like you don't know this person. Like it's a television character." And like he didn't understand the emotions of that moment and the connection that I had with the character, with the story, with the entire show, like how that lingers after the fact. And so I was like, am I a freak? Am I weird? Like does nobody else like feel this way about this show? And then somehow I found Nikki and Steven's channel, watching Nikki totally lose her shit. And I was like, oh, good. Okay. I feel so validated. I'm not alone. Somebody else also was like sobbing uncontrollably when this happened. And then it was like Burlington bar reactions. Like Game of Thrones really was, I think, the big thing that started a lot of people's interest in reactions, because like everyone's like, oh, we have to see what people thought of the Red Wedding. Like, I can't wait for this. And I just remember watching those after every episode of Game of Thrones that came out. Like I couldn't wait. Like I'm like it's Monday and it's not uploaded yet, and then like you'd have to wait till Tuesday or something. And it was like kind of this thing where it's like it gives you like a nice little dopamine hit, but you're re-experiencing the emotions that you had when you watched it before. And like the other people who don't get it or don't feel it that deeply, like you feel like a freak. Yeah. And it gives you like a sense of community in your people. And that was my introduction into realizing that other people were like me.
Totally. I mean, yeah, because you mentioned, that vulnerability, that emotional response that you get. It's very prevalent in the reaction space. You're right. Like, I think the first era of the reaction space, hype, excitement was sort of like the key currency for the first few years. Being excited for trailers, stuff like that. That was sort of like what drove it. Once Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead sort of came into the space and ushered in the TV reaction era, that's when emotion and sort of the wider range of things I think were what people latched onto. And yes, the vulnerability you're able to share on camera is a big part of, I think, your brand and like your channel success in a way. How do you sort of manage that vulnerability when you're on camera, when you have to be engaged and you sort of feel it coming on, and just knowing in your head you start to have to balance what you're feeling also with the needs of the product, so to speak, to be on camera and still be engaged with the show?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if I necessarily think about being filmed when I'm feeling those things. I think I kind of forget sometimes. And I'm a little bit better about like making sure that like I'm not hiding my face when I'm crying, but sometimes it's like really hard. But I think because I am openly just emotional in general, I don't really shy away from showing that. And the fact that people have told me, whether it was on Patreon or in the comments, they sent me an email, an Instagram message about how me being able to express myself like that really helped them. They'll say like, I never cried during that episode, but then watching your reaction, it brought tears to my eyes because it made them feel it a little bit deeper. And I think knowing that allows me even more freedom. Like now I'm not afraid to just openly make the ugliest cry face I possibly can. And it's not that I'm forcing it, but it's just like, I'm not afraid of not looking pretty. I'm not afraid of like, having snot running down my face or like tears or like makeup running or anything like that. I think just with over time and feeling accepted into the community, and then, just it's a catharsis for me to feel those feelings and to get those out. It's exhausting, but it's also like it really like I feel like that's my gym workout for the day.
Right.
And
Yeah.
sometimes there's a lot of things I watch in one day and I'm like, wow, this was a bad day to watch all of this.
Yeah.
But you know, like I find that the more I do it, the easier it is because I know it's helping somebody when they're watching it to feel those feelings as well.
Totally. Yeah. And you're right. It can be taxing. It could be taxing to go through those. And, once you're done, like it doesn't, you don't switch it off. It stays with you for a little bit,
Oh
especially
yeah.
for, big moments that aren't cathartic in a good way. They can be cathartic in a bad way. Like you said, like someone dying on camera that you really liked and like, you have to sit with it. I know that's impacted me and others, when a big character dies that you really like. How do you, I guess, then come down after that, when the camera's off and like you have to sort of go on with your day and like, move on with those feelings?
Yeah, so I jokingly say I go and I stare at a wall. Um, but I kind of do, or like I'll go veg out, or I'll watch something that is rather uplifting. Like especially if it's like if I've watched something that's really taxing, and I like first of all wash my face, and that always like is like a refresher. It's like okay, the tears are gone. I'll watch like Scrubs or something really silly and goofy, or I'll rewatch like like an episode of Avatar or something that like brings me joy.
Hmm.
And then there's a lot of times where I'll just go for a walk. Like I just have to go think about this thing that I just watched and digest
Right.
it. I think it's a lot of self-care stuff. Like I said, like washing your face, like taking a shower, like those things like really like help your body reset. I'm really good at like I have like drinks that have like magnesium and calming stuff in it to like really help like soothe. So
Right.
I go to
Smart.
therapy like twice a month. I talk to my friends about stuff, especially my editors. I talk to my editors about a lot.
Hmm. Yeah.
So they're normally the ones that I'll be like, and I'll see ya. And then I'll talk for another 15 minutes at the end of the video just to my editor about
Right.
everything. So it's a lot of different ways. It really depends on what it is that I watched, but like the heavier things, definitely like sometimes I just need to go and be somewhere quiet and watch TikTok for 4 hours or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. Just let it wash over you. Yeah. But the thing is, like, so yeah, with the videos itself, like you mentioned, like having those outros and like the ability to decompress. One thing I noticed about your channel very early on was you seemed, like a fan of the space, but also very much like a student of the space in a way. Very early in your videos, you had, like proper picture in picture, you had separated audio tracks, you had like a intro and outro, closing review, stuff like that. A lot of sort of attributes that people commonly learn along the way as they, grow a channel, but you seem to be kicked that off like really early. Was there any sort of specific channel or channels that you took inspiration from in how you formatted your videos?
Yeah, I think I remember watching a lot of like Natalie Gold and like just the idea of like just it being her and watching the thing and making sure there was enough space for that was really because I messed that up. The very first video, I was like so excited to watch episode 1 of What If, and it was Captain Carter. And then when I went to go back and edit it together, I would have had to put the reaction behind me because I was in the wrong spot. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, my setup wasn't great. So I think that's something you learn over time. But then I think I've watched so many reactions that I know the stuff I don't like more so than the stuff that I do. Like I don't like when the reaction's like right here and you're looking down at it. I like fun lighting in the background. I think I got that from like Blind Wave
Mhm.
because I like love how their background like has all like fun stuff in the back.
Right.
So it's not that I like try to emulate anything from anyone else, but I definitely know what I don't like, and I think that that's kind of the main thing that I like take. Like I don't like bad lighting. Thankfully, I upped my audio game and got a nice little microphone, so it's more learning what I didn't want it to look like more so than what I did want it to look like. And it's always evolving. Like it's
Right.
it's always going to be, ever changing. I don't think I'll ever be completely satisfied with how everything looks. I want to like change the background or do something. So So it's there's some people that I've taken inspiration from, but it's mostly seeing things where I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Preferences of like,
Yeah.
this and that, the hodgepodge of things. Were there any specific learning curves or obstacles you had getting started in terms of editing, lighting, recording, but also in terms of just being on camera and being, an engaged participant?
I think I don't want to say that like it was really natural for me to talk to the camera because that's a little weird. But like I've always been somebody who's talked to myself. Like I get caught talking to myself all the time when I'm like even at work, and and it's like working through things. So like I'm an outward thinker. So like I even when I'm like watching, like I was like watching like just Bridgerton by myself, like I save certain things for myself, and I realize that sometimes I look over and I'm like, what are you doing? There's not a camera there. Stop it. Like, and it's natural for me to say things out loud. So that wasn't super hard, but commentaries, learning to get rid of my ums and buts and uhs and learning to deliver things smoother. That took a while. Like I just said, I don't think it ever goes completely away, and that's why I have really great editors. I think learning curve wise, definitely. I mean, you always start out with whatever you have. So I had a Logitech webcam. I did not have a microphone. I used the microphone on the webcam. I had like an old like MacBook like Air like from like 2015 that I was like editing on iMovie. I still don't really know how to use Adobe. Like I'll do like full length reactions sometimes to like speed things up. And my editor had to show me how to do that. But mostly it's iMovie and like, of course the learning curve with copyright, all that stuff. Like you learn it as you go through what angles work best for you, what lighting works best for you, what colors, draw out the best coloring for the background. Like I really can't wear plaid shirts anymore because it's too busy with everything else that I have going on. So, you just learn by doing. And I would just say that like the more you do it, the more videos you make, the more you learn about what you cannot do, what you like, what you don't like, and, kind of just go from there.
Right. And, once you had your sort of footing with that, the interesting I was thinking about your channel was when you started, it was a combination of sort of big IP stuff. It was Star Wars and Marvel. Those were your interests. And what was unique about that to me was when I saw that, usually when I see people start these channels, they're either really like caught up with everything, or they're like starting from scratch. And you were kind of in the middle of that. You were obviously a fan of these things, but you were catching up to different pockets of it that you weren't familiar with. I guess what is your background with those big IPs, with Marvel, Star Wars, and all those other sort of large brands?
So Marvel, the one thing that I did do during the pandemic was I watched all the movies from beginning to end. And then I was like, now what? And I had already seen them. I went and saw a lot of them in the theater. The background, like comic book stuff about Marvel, I didn't really know much about. And I think a lot of that is a learn along the way type of thing. Like I didn't really know anything about like Scarlet Witch or Wanda Maximoff or like any of those characters. So I was learning along with like the shows that were coming out. And I didn't really watch. I don't remember seeing any of the Iron Man movies until I think I had watched. I think the first. Maybe I did see like Hulk or something, and I was like, I don't know if this is for me. But like I do remember seeing like a couple movies and then going back and watching the Iron Man movies. And so Marvel was something that I learned to love along the way. Star Wars, born into. Like my parents took me to see Return of the Jedi when I was like almost 3 years old, so like my mom said that I cried when Jabba the Hutt died. Sure, that's her memory. I don't know, but so I was just like born into the Star Wars, Star Trek kind of family. We watched sci-fi movies. We loved sci-fi shows growing up. And then there was that big gap of time where I didn't watch stuff. So that's where I got to like catch up on like Battlestar Galactica, currently Farscape, Doctor Who, all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I have an Obi-Wan Kenobi tattoo. I tell everyone this because like I want you to know that I'm a serious fan.
Yeah.
I've absolutely loved Star Wars my entire life.
Yeah, no doubts here for sure. And once you had your footing with the channel and like sort of those properties, you started to expand into other territories, new shows, stuff like that. Did you have any sort of strategy early on about how you wanted to get into that? I think the first one you started with Arcane. That was sort of the first new thing that you dived into.
Yeah, I think because I was taking kind of suggestions from the comments, I didn't have a Patreon or anything. So like, you know, whatever somebody would comment on, you know, on YouTube, I'd just be like, I don't know what Arcane is. Like, and I'm like, great, I guess I should watch that because I don't know what it is. And then it ended up being like one of the most amazing things I've ever watched. And it was really, it really affected me on a personal, emotional level. And then I was just like, okay, I think people know the stuff that's going to hit me. So they're recommending things to get those reactions out of me because they know how deeply I feel things. But Arcane was the first animated series I ever watched where I was just like, oh, I'm going to watch cartoons. Okay. And like I watched Clone Wars and Rebels, but like I was like, that's a Star Wars property. Like you kind of have to watch one of those. And I was blown away, not only by the animation, but the story and the characters and just how much I loved it and how profound it was and how it lived with me long after I watched an episode. That like the next animated thing I watched where I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be like Arcane or not, which was Invincible.
Right.
And it is not like Arcane. I mean, there might be some similarities, but it was definitely completely different. So, you know, I think like it opened my eyes up to animation a little bit. Everyone knew that I kind of liked sci-fi, so they started recommending that I watch The Expanse. So a lot of those shows were definitely from recommendations, and then there was other shows that I just absolutely was not going to miss, which was like, you know, your Obi-Wan Kenobi and Stranger Things, The Boys, stuff like that, entities that I already like loved and watched and I knew I was going to watch. So but I love when people introduce me to new things because I don't know if I would have experienced it if they hadn't.
Right. And the thing is with, you know, those new shows, you're diving in pretty blind. That's part of the, you know, the product and like sort of the brand here. Do you have any sort of prerequisites for how you approach a new show, or anything you have to like sort of like, you know, prep yourself for when you're diving into something that's like completely, you know, unknown to you?
If it's unknown to me, I typically ask my editors like, hey, have you heard of this? And like, do you think it would be a good show for me? Because they know me so well. And I try not to learn anything ahead of time. I like going in as blind as possible to something that like, because I don't want any anticipation of like watching like a really cool trailer to like make me think like, okay, I know what this show's about, and then kind of be let down by it.
Right.
So like going in blind, like definitely Invincible. Until Robert Kirkman's name popped up in the title card, I didn't really know what I was watching. And I was like, Robert Kirkman, like,
Yeah.
uh-oh. And then it was all just like blood splatter from there. So it's like not knowing anything going in is like one of the best things in the world. And I like doing trailer reactions to things that I know that I'm excited about, but like stuff that like I didn't know anything about Fallout.
Right.
Absolutely zero. And I was just like, oh, it's like, this is going to be like a video game thing where they're just blowing up people or something. And it was like so amazing. And I was so happy I knew nothing. And just like, as the characters were going through things, my mind was being blown by certain aspects of it and the look of it and the feel of it and just the characters. And I was like, I'm glad I didn't know anything going into this because this is amazing. What a great surprise.
Yeah. We're really in the golden age of, I think, video game adaptations for things like that. You know, The Last of Us. Yeah, luckily it was another hit.
Which was definitely, I didn't know anything about what was going to happen in that first episode. And I know there were people that were like, here it comes, you know?
Yeah, and with those big IPs, you obviously have big fandoms that you're stepping into, that already exist. They've been around for decades, and then with these new ones, those also have very fervent fandoms that you're learning, you're being welcomed into. Have there been any specific fandoms that you've discovered through your time with the channel that have resonated with you?
Yes. Avatar: The Last Airbender not only was like a huge fandom, but such a welcoming fandom. They get so excited when there is a new reactor that gets it immediately. And I didn't know I was getting it immediately until maybe 8, 10 episodes in. And then I would read some comments of you get Zuko. And I was like, oh, I get Zuko. Okay, that's good. I thought I was off base maybe. I didn't know. But they're so welcoming, and they're just they don't want to spoil anything for you. And they're so excited. And I think it's because a lot of the stuff that I've been watching recently has been 20 some years old. So they might have watched it when they were a kid, and they've been able to show it their kids, or maybe they watched it when they were teenagers or something, and now their young children are watching this. So it gives them different perspectives. So then, they're just really excited to watch somebody who is seeing it as the first time as an adult, and whether or not I'm oh, this is a kid's show and it's silly cartoons or something. But it definitely, that community was so welcoming. I would say a lot of the sci-fi shows, especially The Expanse, they have a very rabid fan base, and they have stuck with me with every other show, and suggested that I should watch. I think after The Expanse, what did I start watching? Was it Battlestar Galactica? I forget which one it was. There's so many, yeah. But I started watching Battlestar Galactica, and then when that was coming to an end, they were like, oh, you have to watch Babylon 5. You have to watch Farscape. You have to watch Deep Space Nine. You have to watch so they're excited for you to watch this other thing that they loved. And it's not even that they're similar, but it's because they know that I'm probably going to love it myself.
Right.
So those fan bases have been great. The weird one was actually Star Wars fans. And I know that they have a little toxic group.
Yeah.
And that really surprised me. I was really, really sad when I was getting a lot of hate comments from Star Wars fans.
Yeah,
that made me very sad.
It's a whole discussion right now, specifically with the current shows going on at the time, and it's something that I think obviously the online space is trying to deal with and trying to maintain. And I guess how do you approach that? The balancing the online discourse that is there, but also trying to maintain your own opinions about things that you had to sort of generate on the fly, video to video.
Yeah, I think I'm very self-aware that I know how I feel about things, or going into things being open-minded about it. And not having a set expectation. And I learned that the hard way because I was so excited about Obi-Wan, and I really didn't like that series. And I voiced my opinion about not liking it. And that's where a lot of people jumped on to a lot of hate. But I think now I kind of have a FU attitude where I'm that's my opinion, man, and it's not for everybody, or it is for a very specific group of people, especially watching The Boys. A lot of people are now catching on that there's a specific group that was getting made fun of. and it's just there's a lot of opinions in the comments with certain episodes, and I think a year ago that might have bothered me, and now I'm just that's your opinion, man. Carry on with life.
Yeah.
Doesn't change my thoughts about it.
Right. You gotta carry on with your own opinion. Yeah. Because if you try to anticipate what they're gonna say, how they feel, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. So you gotta really do your own thing.
I don't want to be influenced to change how I think and feel about anything unless I'm wanting to find that. So it's just no, I'm good.
Yeah. And with the shows like Battlestar, Avatar, stuff like that, and discovering new things, the fans that you engage with come in with a certain bias, but also anticipation of what they expect from you, and you sort of can feel that through the comments, even though they're being on their best behavior to not spoil things or to tell you things ahead of time. How do you manage going into a show that has sort of a beloved obvious hype behind it, and trying to maintain expectations from within in yourself, so that you know that your reaction is genuine?
Yeah, I think I have to take it just how I take life is like one day at a time. I don't worry that much about what's coming up in the future or anything like that. And I take it one episode at a time. Because if I sit there and worry about whether or not it's going to be good, I mean, like, I won't do a reaction if I'm not in a good mental space for it. If I'm like tired or it's been a long day, like I'm like, I'll watch the episode tomorrow. So I always make sure that I'm in a good headspace before I watch something. But I've had a lot of people say like, make sure you bring tissues to the next reaction. And thankfully I'll be like episodes ahead. So I already know what they're talking about and I've already watched the episode. So it didn't spoil anything for me.
Right.
But like there was one that in particular that I saw a comment about a certain episode of Blue Eye Samurai where they were like, oh my gosh, this episode is amazing. It's my favorite episode of the entire season. And I wish I never read that comment, because then when I watched the episode, I was like, yeah, that was good. Like, and I don't know if it like took the wind out of my sails or if it was just kind of like, I think I might have enjoyed it if I hadn't read that, or like, not that I didn't even enjoy it, but maybe I might have been on the same page with it had I not known that going into it. So, you know, that's why like you try to avoid the comments as much as you can. As soon as somebody starts saying like, this might be a spoiler, I'm like, nope, next one.
Yeah, it's it can influence you for sure. Like I've definitely seen on other channels, people, you know, saying like, I can't wait for you to see, you know, episode, you know, 121 of this, like, you know, thing. It's like when it's very specific like that, then it sticks in your brain. Like you kind of get into that zone of like, oh, I'm supposed to feel a certain way, and now it's sort of affecting how I feel in general.
Yeah. I know a lot of people did that before episode 3 of Arcane, and I made a joke at the beginning of the episode. I was like, you guys, you don't have to warn me about this stuff. It's not a tsunami.
Yeah.
And then I think that might have been the hardest I've ever cried on camera.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like I get why you guys were worried, but like, yeah, it's, I know they just get excited because they're just like this next one's going to be amazing. And I just tell me they're all going to be amazing. That way I don't know, or they all suck. So then I'll be surprised. I don't know.
Yeah. And, you know, you mentioned Expanse. Expanse has, you know, a very, you know, active fandom. You were out here last year for the Expanse event that they had for the video game.
I missed you.
I know. Yeah.
I had so much FOMO.
Yeah. Looking back on that, I was like, I didn't know you were a part of that. So like in hindsight, like I wish I had known you were there. I would invite you to the dinner we had with like Greg and the normies and Sunny and everything.
I know. I was on my Instagram just like staring at it going, oh, but I had to like be on a like 4 a.m. flight back to Vegas anyway. So it's like, I couldn't have gone out if I wanted to, but like, I still was like really sad. I was like, oh, that would have been so much fun.
Next time for sure. But from the Expanse, you got into Battlestar Galactica. I think that's a natural sort of pivot a lot of people have. Battlestar, like I mentioned up top, being my favorite show of all time. Just going through that with you is like so important, and now I'm glad that I see other people going through it, you know, like Sunny and like a handful of other channels are like getting into it now. It's such an amazing show for me just because of the scale of it. I think it has a lot of the qualities of what I like in a show, where it starts relatively small in a way in terms of scope and then expands very large. We don't have to get into too much of a Battlestar Galactica tangent as much as I would like to.
It's okay if you want to. I'm here for you.
But I guess, yeah, just like for my own sake, like I guess how do you feel about the show now in hindsight, now that it's past you and you get to look back on it as a whole experience?
Yeah. Okay. So I will say when it was coming to an end, I could not wait for it to be over. And the reason why is because it's the existence of humanity just hanging in the balance for 4 seasons, and the emotions that I'm feeling about it. And I went through every stage of grief after I finished that show, where I was just like, no, maybe they'll reboot it. Like, you know, maybe I'll get more in the future, or, you know, like I was trying to like reconcile, because I was like, just like, okay, it's finished. It's done. I felt like I threw the ring in Mordor, and I was like, okay, I did the journey. Yeah. And it's so emotionally taxing. And I tell everyone that like, you got to watch it way differently than I did. I know that there's the joke about the binge watching it on Portlandia, and like, I don't know how they weren't comatose afterwards, but, having a week in between those episodes to decompress and then having, 9 months to a year in between seasons is definitely, I think, a lot mentally easier to take it in. When you watch like 4 episodes in a row, like I'll watch like 2 episodes on a Friday and then 2 episodes on a Saturday, and sometimes they're really heavy.
Yeah.
So like that heaviness, I was like, I'm ready for this to be done. And then once it was done, I was like, no, I need more. I need more. It has to come back. And the part about it is that like it's not only just a great show entertainment wise, but like story wise. Not really knowing what was coming and like being able to guess things. Like I'm really good at predicting things if a show is predictable.
Yeah.
I always say that when people are just like, you had to have watched this beforehand. And I'm like, no, the show's just predictable. But like with Battlestar Galactica, there were so many things that were not predictable that I could not have seen coming, that were like shocks or like surprises, good or bad, or, even like funny moments, like where there were like moments of levity. I was like, wow, I needed that more than I thought I did, so like it's a different animal altogether.
Yeah.
And like I have been creeping on other Patreons that like have it like on their like vote for us to watch this, and so I was like in Blind Wave, and I was like Battlestar Galactica, Battlestar, because I want to watch them watch it because it's so amazing, and I would love to get all of their perspectives on it, So it's like one of those, dare I say, a once in a lifetime show. I can't believe how many once in a lifetime shows I've watched on my channel, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Battlestar Galactica, it's phenomenal stuff.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the day for, like, because it's a hidden gem in a way, because a lot of channels haven't picked it up because it landed so long ago, and the ending was a bit controversial, so it kind of got lost in the sort of discourse, like you said, similar with the show Lost, how they received that at the end. So I'm eager to see.
That's a management of expectations. I don't think
Exactly.
that's the show's fault. I would just put it out there. Like, I didn't know how it was going to end, and I'm perfectly fine with how it ended.
Yeah. I've seen the show, I think, about 10 times over now, and I am very satisfied with the ending. It gets easier for me every time, and I pick things up every time too. But when you finish the show, that sort of seemed to usher in like a new era of the channel, because you ended that, and then you ended a handful of other things, and so you started, you said Farscape, Doctor Who, Fullmetal Alchemist. You're opening the door to anime now with that, so it's a big new horizon for you. I guess for anime, diving into Full Metal is I think the first step into like a larger world that people would be eager to see you jump into. Are there any other plans for, future anime shows on the channel?
So I think Avatar was the thing that allowed me to trust that animated shows, like from start to completion, can have an amazing story, amazing arcs, amazing characters. So when there's a show that people recommend to me and I know that it has an end and a beginning, I very much am like, okay, like it's a big commitment, but I feel like I trust now that I'm going to be like kind of like immersed in it more so. Cause like it's easier to get like immersed in like, shows that like take place like common day, because like, it's like going outside. But like, being in an animated world that like is very foreign, and like concepts are different, and, characters are not what you expect at all. And then, I think I'm up to episode 13 or 14 of Full Metal Alchemist's Brotherhood. Very important to say that. And I can't tell you how many times I've cried, and I'm sold. I'm very much in. And if that's what I can expect out of anime, I think that I'm way more open to it. Now, I was afraid of like, of course, like copyright strikes, because I heard of like channels watching anime and they got strikes and they lost their channel. Yeah. And like, that's terrifying. So like, I think I was always like, yeah, I'm not going to watch anime. That's dangerous. Like, but I think now I trust the recommendations, and I trust my editor, and I would hope that in the future I could do like Death Note or Attack on Titan. There's a lot of other channels that I watch that I can't watch the reactions because I haven't seen the show. So I'm just like, I want to be able to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. Attack on Titan would be the big one. I think that's up there, I think, with me as my right there with Battlestar for me. in terms
Oh,
of,
wow.
again, scale, characters, story. It's definitely one of the greatest shows of all time I've seen. Not even just like animated, just like ever. So I would highly recommend if you can get into that, you know, in your own time, because it's
Oh yeah,
also very very
it'll be a
taxing.
while, but like I'll get there eventually.
Yeah. And yeah, you know, you mentioned the editors that you've worked with, you know, over time. They obviously play a big part of the channel.
Mhm.
Because I think when you were started, you were editing yourself, and then you eventually got, you know, editors to come help you. Xander being one of your main guys, and
He's my main guy.
I've spoken with him, you know, when I helped you out with the Battlestar edits a little bit, and he left a nice comment on in the Patreon for LM reactions at one point for me, because I did their interview last year, and commented on their Patreon about it, and he says like, oh, like I saw your edits for Galactica, and like I, you know, refined my editing style because of how smooth your style was with him, and like that meant a lot to me, so I appreciate that. And I
Yeah.
noticed that too when I was watching your reactions, like her style is very similar to something what I would do, the way it's cut, the way it flows. So I was like, that was interesting. So I'm glad that kind of
Yeah.
came around. How did you meet Xander, I guess, and how did sort of like that process of building that, you know, that working relationship start to get editors to come help you?
So when I was finishing up Arcane, I had said something about like I wanted to watch The Expanse. And I was like, but I'm going to need an editor. So I put it out on YouTube, like a community post. And, you know, I got a lot of emails, and there were some people that had like a lot of experience editing, but not necessarily like experience with reactions. And then there were a lot of people that were really raw, but like watch a lot of reactions. And he sent me a couple things that he had done, and I just liked his style when I saw it. And then we became such good friends that I think I allow him to, I just like send him the stuff now, and he just does whatever he wants with it. Like I trust him implicitly to like, you know, give context, make me like, at least like, I don't care about like looking bad, because like, you know, make me look like a goof, but like I can trust him to roast me if I say something off or dumb or like wrong or like a name or whatever, you know. So meeting him was like meeting like one of my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
We talk every single day. We text each other every single day. So it's funny how like one email changed everything.
Right.
And he's so part of the channel now that like it's almost like 51% mine, 49% his, because like he's such an important cog in the wheel of making the machine work.
Yeah.
And it seems like it was a little too easy to just receive an email and all of a sudden have an amazing editor.
Yeah.
And like there's a learning curve with like copyright and all that stuff, but like he's just so good at his craft, and he's just, I'm very lucky to have Xander. I also have another editor, Nathaniel, and you know I love that he did a lot for like Avatar, Korra, Fallout. He's currently doing X-Men 97 and Farscape. So you know, like I've got two people in my corner that I trust implicitly that are just amazing at their craft, and you know I'm the person on the screen, but they're the creator. They're the ones that are like putting everything together and having fun with it. And I love that I have that relationship with both of them. Nathaniel, I got actually from my Patreon when I had mentioned something about, I want to watch Avatar, but I need an editor for it. And then he immediately sent me a message, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to like help you out. And it just worked out great.
Yeah.
I got very lucky.
Yeah. I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, because I know, you know, firsthand how impactful, you know, good editors can be for a channel, particularly for an individual who's doing this on their own. That's very similar to how I got into the space with my friend Iman Snow. I was just a fan of hers back in like 2017, 2018, and she had mentioned possibly need an editor. So I sort of like reached out just through a DM online saying like, hey, I have editing background, you know, if you're interested, I can help you out and see if, you know, works out for you. And really for me, what motivated me was like, I just saw that she was a single mother of two and like doing this, you know, editing, recording all on her own. So I was like, she must need some sort of help, you know, she should be able to like, you know, not edit to go be with her kids, you know, on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, from there, like it developed into a really great relationship. You know, I'm still, you know, good friends with her today. I edit her all her Star Wars reactions for her channel, and it's been great so far for the last few years. I guess now that you have, you know, a few, you know, several shows under your belt with Xander and Nathaniel. Does that impact your on camera, relationship in terms of like, that they're the ones handling it, that, you have that synergy with them in terms of how it looks on the end of it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I know that I'm just like, I just said something and I'm gonna get roasted for it. Or like, definitely like, I've been like, yeah, I don't know if like we need to include all of like this or whatever. When we have like a great relationship where we can talk about that kind of stuff. Definitely like during my commentaries, it's the most like when I'm like face to face with the camera and I like do something, I'll mess up and I'll just be like, boop, and I'll be like, like that's where like the little rainbow thing comes in that somebody made an error, and sometimes they won't do that just to be like, no, we're gonna make you look silly. Yeah. So it's I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love when the editors are able to inject themselves in like in a fun way, because it's they're such an important part of like how these things can operate, and I'm happy that the channel has evolved with them at your side over the last few years.
I couldn't do it without them. Like they are the ones that, like I said, they're the ones that make the world go round over here. I'm just someone crying in front of a television and I happen to record it and send it to them,
Yeah. And for the space in general, like I mentioned before, you're, a fan of the space. You keep up with a lot of channels, and you've met some of the channels as well over the years. I guess, how have you viewed the space and your involvement in it over the last few years? And, being a fan now, being like a peer, in terms of like, you're really on the level with a lot of people that I know. Now that I've known for several years who've been doing this, and like you're definitely up there, I think, as like, in my opinion, like sort of like one of the next, great part of the next generation of reactors that have taken up the mantle in a way.
At first it's like, because I remember being at the Expanse event, and I beforehand I was getting ready doing my hair and makeup, and I was watching Kat and Sunny. I think it was episode 4 of Arcane that they were doing a reaction to. And then I went downstairs and I was eating breakfast, and I was talking to a guy from Germany, just a quick interaction about what we were doing there. And I said that I was a reactor. He got up and he left, and then I heard a little voice say, "Excuse me." And I look over and it's Sunny. Sunny Olsen's just sitting there, and I was like, and I like grabbed my coffee and I slid over, and I was like, "I just watched you and your wife this morning." And I was like, how awkward, what an awkward thing to say to somebody. But it was like the first time I like had met another reactor, and we had like a good chat about like the Expanse and the event that we were going to go to later on that day. And then like the normies were there, and it's funny because I was so afraid to go up and say hi to them, and I'm just like, they're just like me, like they're just watching stuff, and like like I'd probably be great friends with them. I should go up to him, and I'm just like, no, I'm too nervous. And then, you meet Serge, and you're like, oh, he's my new best friend. Yeah. They're just so wonderful. Him and Mickey Rana, like they were fantastic. So like, then it made you feel like you were part of the group. Mm-hmm. And I'm still, of course, fans of other channels, but then now that I've been doing it for a while, and I'm in other people's comments, like Gallifrey Girls just started watching Battlestar Galactica. Right. They're in season 2, and I try to comment on like certain things in their comments, and like I want them to know that they have my support too, as somebody who just watched the show, and I want the people that are in their comments to see, they're like, oh, we just watched her reactions, and know that like I'm watching these, and I feel like that's a good way to support them. And Sunny was kind of, I mean, they just had a baby, and I don't know how people do this with children. Right. I can barely even do it with a full-time job, but like he was kind of on and off about posting, and I was always trying to tell people like, hey, there's a new episode from Sunny, over on his channel, and I'd have the link, and I always want to like push it because like, 1, I really like the show, and 2, I really like the reactor. So like like now I feel like I have a responsibility to like really help people that like to push more people towards their channel, get them more views. So if people like see this thing that like, I'm like, this is great. I want more people to know about this.
Yeah.
It's a great evolution, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that, like you said, that responsibility to help one another, I think is something that the reaction space has been naturally really good at. I think like everyone's really been like great at like helping one another and like lifting up, you know, each other's reactions and content, and working with each other, collaboration, stuff like that. It's been my favorite part of working in the space, is just being able to see them, everyone come together, and this being sort of a shared universe. And that's kind of the point of this whole podcast, in a sense, is to be able to share that with you and everyone together and crossing streams and such. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, when you sent me the message to do the avatar thing, I was like, yeah, like not just to do it and be with other reactors, because like again, the first thing I've ever watched like really was like Burlington Bar, and then like there's Sean Tank Top, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, you know, we like I'm like combining something that was like kind of like there's no way that like these people would ever know I exist. Now I'm included in something, and then like, you know, like seeing you pop up into my messages, I was like, whoo, this is exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I definitely want to do more, you know, crossing streams, crossovers and stuff. Like I'm forgetting when the exact anniversary for Battlestar is, but definitely might want to do something for that if once people are caught up on it. There's more people to get in there.
I will be with you on that one.
Yeah.
Call me.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's start, I guess, winding things down here. What has been the most consistent obstacle you faced in your time with the channel?
I think for me, I think it's, it wouldn't just be channel alone. It's like life in general is time. Mm-hmm. Balancing being able to work a full-time job and then come home and do this and have them both coexist at the same time. It's really hard to not look at my phone when I'm at work, when I have a break, and like look at like comments, or like, you know, for a long time it was subscriber count. Like I was just like getting higher. Mm-hmm. And thankfully my boss, I've worked with him for going on 18 years, and like he's very supportive. But like it's still hard because I still have to work, you know, for health insurance, and, you know, to pay the editors to do things,
right,
and to like then come home. Like sometimes I'm too exhausted. I can't watch something, or I've been going to bed immediately when I get home so I can wake up at 4 a.m. the next day to watch the episode of The Boys before I go into work. Yeah. You know, like that's a hard thing to balance. And then like personal time, like when do you go do something for yourself? Totally. You know, I think I worked 2 years straight before I took a vacation. And then even then it was still channel related because I did everything that was involved with Ted Lasso. So like it was still influenced by the channel. But I think, gosh, if I could get, you know, 1 extra day out of the week and maybe 2 extra hours every day, like that would be so helpful.
Yeah. I definitely feeling on that. Time is always the issue. Yeah. How do you feel you've personally grown over the years with the channel?
Oof. I think the first thing that I could say is I'm really comfortable being me. Mm-hmm. I think for a long time thinking that like my emotions were weird, or like that, like it's not common, it's unusual, or like you need to go talk to somebody about that, because like crying during a television show is not normal. And then I realized I was like, oh no, like this is just my personality. I like being silly and goofy, and I like having a good time, and I don't want to take things too seriously. And I think it took me a really long time to realize that that's who I was. And that's who I am. And right. that's, and I'm very proud of that person. I'm very confident being that person now. Yeah. So I think over the years of doing the reactions and realizing that I'm not alone, that people appreciate those things, and the people that were in my life saying the opposite were really just uncomfortable because they don't have that freedom to be silly and goofy and care. Like, I don't care if somebody thinks that I'm weird. Like, yeah. I don't have time for you. So I think there's that. And I think I also have grown a little bit of a thicker skin. Being able to take, I don't like saying that people like criticize things, but being able to take somebody who says something that they're projecting something into the comments, it's really hard to not take those things personally. And then now I will look at it and kind of go like, I bet that person went through something. Or,
Yeah.
like there's something about this particular episode that like maybe triggered some feeling inside, and it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And I think really like not letting that kind of burn a hole in my soul really is huge. And gosh, I'm trying to think of other ways that I've grown. Keeping a schedule, like being a responsible adult. I live in Vegas, so when people are like, "Oh, let's have a pool day," like I'm like, that's going to be the whole day. We're probably going to drink a lot, and I'm probably going to want to sleep all day Sunday. And I'm like, I just don't have the time to do that. So the personal growth of being able to say no and be responsible for my time. I can't just do things spontaneously anymore. So there's a lot of growth factors that I think I'm very proud of. I don't think anything bad's come out of it other than like maybe bags under my eyes and like, copyright issues of like giving me stress. Like sometimes I'll dream about copyright problems and I'll like wake up and I'm like, wait, that's not even, why am I worrying about that right now?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I've definitely had some of those for sure. The final question is, beyond any monetary or financial value, what is the most rewarding aspect of the channel for you?
Oh gosh, the community, the people, getting to know a lot of people like on a personal basis that like I talk to on Instagram like all the time. That started out like when I had like 4,000 subscribers, and there's still people that I like. I'll think of them and like send them something. So like the personal connections that I've made, the professional, which I say professional, but like I think you're my friend, so like stuff like that where it's like there's so many different things that bring you together, whether it's different fandoms, like there's a Venn diagram and I'm in the middle. And it's how uplifting people can be, how supportive people can be, the stories that people share. Like certain episodes, like there's one coming up for Doctor Who that like a lot of people were sharing stories that like I definitely gave them the space to discuss it and put it out there.
Right.
The community aspect of it, and that was my favorite part from the beginning. I hated the editing part. I loved watching the movies because that was something I always did. But like, being in the comments and talking to people about stuff was always like the best part about everything. Even if they weren't like praising what I was saying, but they were sharing an aspect of something that maybe I didn't look at before. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from with that. Like the community has just been amazing.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely, my favorite part so far of like just this whole experience is like the community with like the commentators, but also the peers that you have and the people that you meet sort of along the way in this space who are going through the same things. It's very important to sort of share those experiences together. We do have our final questionnaire that we give to everyone. Just 10 questions down the line for you. First one being, what is your favorite TV show of all time?
Oh, of all time or on the channel?
All time, just in general.
Time. I'm probably going to say Lost. Okay. I think that was the first thing that I ever watched that amazed me. And with a little caveat that I would also, I have like maybe top 1A, 1B, 1C. So Lost being the one that was like, blew me away. The one that like I still think of very fondly and I want everyone in the world to watch is Fringe.
Oh, yes.
It was phenomenal and I loved those characters, and me and my best friend, like we still discuss it to this day. And then I think Scrubs.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I love Ted Lasso so much, and of course, Bill Lawrence is behind that. But like, Scrubs is like one of those things that it's just like it's my go-to feel-good thing, except the sad episodes. But like, other than that, like it's phenomenal. So I would say those three are like the best of all time.
That makes sense. Well, we are planning a Lost anniversary Crossing the Streams in September, so I'll make sure you get the invite for that.
I'll have to rewatch it because it's been a long time.
Next question is, what is your favorite film of all time?
Ooh, so my go-to has always been The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, that movie came out 6 months before I was born. how is that my favorite movie? I don't know, but I think that was the one that first like was the first like surprise emotional impact, you know, where like being a kid, like I cried at the reveal of like Luke's father, and like I was just like, oh, it was like so blown away. So I would say that and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think that that is an amazing film. It's filmed beautifully. I've always been a Jim Carrey fan, and I was so proud of him in that. Just the cinematography, everything about that movie is just, you learn something new every time you watch it. So originally Empire, but Eternal Sunshine was probably one of the most impactful movies that, like, when I like watch film, I'm just like, nothing will ever really top that.
Yeah, good pairing. Good pairing on both ends.
Very different, but like still very good.
Yeah. What stresses you out?
The same thing that I like can't control, which is time. So there are channels that can get things up immediately after viewing. They might have been given something ahead of time to watch, so then right after it airs, their reaction's up. And I don't feel like I'm getting left behind, but like you don't want to like not be in the mix either. You don't want to not be relevant. You don't want to be so far behind that the episode that you're watching, everyone's just like, yo, we watched that like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So I think time really does stress me out. And I think the older we get, the more you see time as a precious commodity. And you don't want to waste it on something that like maybe you don't want to watch, or people you don't want to hang out with, or a job you don't want to work. So I think there's that. And you know, I think that that's the biggest thing. And that's why I say that I live day to day, like instead of like always thinking about the future, because if I worry so much about the future, I always say like, I'll crane my neck, like, and I'll break my neck trying to see into the future, and I'll, you know, break my neck trying to look into the past. So if I'm here and now, I'm stable, this is where I need to be. So that's the biggest stressor. And so that's the biggest thing I try to control.
Yeah. Good motto. Yeah. Good motto there.
Yeah.
What helps you relax?
Oh, definitely. My friends, my closest friends. I love going to like hockey games out here in Vegas. It's so much fun. Even though like you get hyped up, but it's like one of those things where it's just like you get to like just let loose.
Yeah.
I love just listening to music. I was in choir when I was younger, so I really like a different like variety of music, and I really appreciate those things.
Yeah.
I used to say veg out and watch movies, and now it's just like the last thing I want to do is turn on a TV. So, you know, going for walks and like listening to podcasts and stuff like that, it's really relaxing. You know, and going out to like dinners and trying new like wines or new dishes, especially here in Vegas, because there's so many like a lot of Gordon Ramsay places to go to,
right.
and a lot of like high profile restaurants, that it's like fun to go to those and like try different foods. So it's getting out of the house, which I'm very much an indoor cat. So this works out really well for me until I'm like, I need to leave.
Yeah.
I need real oxygen, not the stagnant stuff that's in my house.
I think I feel you on that. Yeah. What is a hobby or passion outside of TV and film that you have?
A lot of it would be painting and woodwork. I know that might surprise people. I really like cutting wood and trying to piece it together. I don't know if that's like the Lego builder in me, or if that's like, I've always been somebody that liked to build things. And then I really got into paint by number. So I'd get like the canvases, and I would just spend like 10 hours just painting. I'd get a crick in my neck, but like, it really is something that like it brings me peace. I wouldn't say it's relaxing, because I feel stressful when it's like almost done and I just have like one color left to find all the little dots. So but like it's a fun little thing that I do like just by myself. And it used to be CrossFit, and it is no longer CrossFit because I hurt myself. So you know what, we can get rid of that hobby. And it's like little things that I can just like do for myself. Like sometimes just cleaning my house. I know that's not a hobby, but like it's so satisfying to like get those things done, and like it's very much for me.
Yeah. Yeah, good. What fictional character do you relate to or just care deeply about?
So I don't know if relate is the right word for this one. But having a hard time. Sorry. Which a lot of people, I don't know if they understood why Cobra Kai was so important to me. I know that's a really weird sentence to start out with. But I'm quarter Japanese, and growing up, I didn't look like Japanese women. I didn't look like the other half of my family that much. And so like meeting Mr. Miyagi was like huge. And then like he'd make facial expressions that like reminded me of my dad. And like my dad's still alive, like he's still here, but like it would just like I'd be like, Dad makes the same face, and like he's half Japanese, so he's not even full Miyagi.
Right.
But like I think that character is the one that had the most profound effect on me. Is kind of like the Uncle Iroh of Avatar, and I think he's the greatest character ever written for movies. But if you want me to say that I relate to a character, it is definitely your Zuko's and your Korras, like the ones with like the little temper tantrums. They get fired up really easy because they are really emotional.
Yeah.
So that I think that's why I'm just like, yeah, I see what's happening with this kid right here. Yep, been there. I mean, not the being an outcast and all that, but
Yeah, especially Korra. That's a
yeah,
good one.
I don't know if I answered your question, but immediately when you said like character, I was like, if I don't mention how much I love Mr. Miyagi, I think I might regret it.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic answer. I think so.
Okay, good.
What is your guilty pleasure, show or film?
Oh God. Okay, just we're not going to judge me, right?
No, definitely not.
So of course, I wouldn't say it's a guilty pleasure, but it's one that I wanted for just myself. I'm sure it would have made great reactions, but Bridgerton is like by far like one of those things where I'm just like,
yeah,
so excited for. But the guilty pleasure, and I hate saying it out loud, is the Kardashians. I hate it. So much, but I'm so just like, oh, I can't wait to see what drama is manufactured this week, and look at the filter that they put over top of themselves to look good. But I'm so like, just like, oh, I can't wait for the tea, like dish it. So, and it feels like silly to say that. I also think, a lot of like the Netflix, like Love is Blind and The Ultimatum, like those trash shows are just wonderful.
Sometimes you need it. Yeah, I don't know if you're caught up on The Boys at the moment.
I am.
Like, okay, yeah, it reminds me of not to spoil anything, but very similar to something that we just learned about Sister Sage. Kind of like what she has to do, to herself to, have some downtime. So yeah, it's a very similar thing. I think.
She had to be incredibly stupid to make some certain choices, but you know what? Trash TV to Bloom an Onion, I'm there. I'm there.
That makes sense. What show or film give you your favorite reaction experience with the channel?
Okay. I think my favorite, which one I didn't expect. I thought I was gonna like just be like, this is old and I don't like it. I think Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Not knowing any of the background, the books, everyone's like, you have to read the books, you have to, and I was just like, but like I was so surprised at how much fun I had during that movie. Like it was such a blast. And I kind of felt the same way about Fallout, where I didn't know anything going into it, and then what a surprise everything was, and I was just like so gleeful to watch every episode and just eat it up. Like it was just wonderful for me, and I was having such a good time. Like you can tell when people are like kind of like, oh, that was fun, and then like when people are like, this is it, I love this.
Yeah, Fallout especially. Yeah, just especially if you aren't familiar with the world, it's a very pleasant surprise, I'd say.
Oh yeah.
What show or film do you wish you could erase from your memory and react to again for the first time on camera? The
Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Hands down, Mandalorian. I didn't even have to think about that one because, one, it was Star Wars, and two, the amount of crying that I did during certain episodes, even when it was like just like season 1, but like season 2 with, like Ahsoka, my favorite animated character in Star Wars, like making her first live appearance, just a basket case.
Yeah.
And I remember watching episode 8. Like I woke up and it must have been like 4 a.m. and I decided not to go to the gym, and I just flipped open my phone and I was watching it crying in bed. And then like, I don't know, I feel like it was like days. It felt like years later, but it was like maybe hours later. I was watching Blind Wave, and, you know, Eric taking his glasses off at episode 8 and just wiping his tears away. And he's like, I'm such a fucking nerd. And I was like, you're my people, you're my people. And I was like, oh, and I had the same reaction where it was just like this overcome of emotion of seeing this character that like we all have like just like wanted him to have his moment, and boy did he have his moment. And it was just so phenomenal. And I wish I had had my channel at that time, because I think it would have been just absolutely great reactions for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely one of those missed opportunities from you know, early days of the channel. And our final question here is, what advice would you give to your past self if you can go back in time when you first started the channel?
Oh, I would just be like, hey, look, just take it easy. Be easy on yourself. The amount of pressure we put on ourselves to be like perfect or deliver a perfect product, or for us to be likable, I think that kind of went out the window pretty quickly for me, where I was just like I'm not going to be able to please everybody. I can't do that in life. I'm certainly going to be able to do it on the internet. So, you know, just be easy with yourself. Be kind. And if you make a mistake, if you say something, I think a Ted Lasso reaction, Rebecca was eating biscuits and I was like, yeah, make her fat. And in the comments, I get told that I was fat shaming, and that ate me up for a while. It really did. And then I was like, you know what? It was a reaction. It's what you felt in the moment. It's okay that when somebody watches it, they disagree with you or they have a judgment about it. That doesn't change who you are. Like, you're not a bad person because you said this thing on the fly. And so just be easy on yourself.
Yeah. Great, fantastic advice, I think, especially for a lot of reactors I know who have those obstacles to overcome still once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing thing. I don't think it ever really goes away. Like, you want to be able to be available on Patreon all the time to answer, you know, questions, or be in the comments, or, you know, respond to every message you receive, and every like YouTube comment. You want to go and you want to like it. You want the person to know that you saw it, or, you know, but it's really hard to keep up with sometimes, and you just have to like be easy on yourself that you can't do it all, and no one expects you to be able to. Right. That's a pressure you're putting on yourself. So you just have to like sit back and go, it's going to be okay. It will be.
Makes sense. Angela, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really fantastic to get to talk to you, finally catch up. I apologize once again for not having you out when you're here for the Expanse. So we'll remember to do that someday. Next time I'm in town, I'll reach out and let you know. Makes sense. For sure. Where can we find you online, on YouTube, social media, otherwise? So obviously YouTube, FunnyLilGal Reacts. You can also I think it's the same thing over on Instagram. I find Discord very confusing. I really would like to get into Discord and Twitch and do some like live streams and stuff like that, but maybe in the future. But it's mostly the Patreon, FunnyLilGal Reacts, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah. That's what I can manage for now. Again, it's the time thing. Fair. It's totally fair. You can find us here. If you follow us on YouTube, please like and subscribe, share, all that good stuff. You can find me at Nerdchronic on social media. Find us at Passionfruit for us on social media. You can find us on our Discord and Patreon. Links down below. And we'll catch everyone on the next episode. Bye.